Welcome to part 2 of our interview with Chris Duane, who is the owner of the Silvershield group that creates mini mintages of silver rounds and has provided many educational and informational videos about silver on his own YouTube channel called Truth Never Told. Let's talk about that for a second, because the paper markets were, basically the manipulation, as far as I'm concerned, begins and ends, because that's where they really affect it.
Yeah.
And there's leverage. There's a certain amount of leverage for, paper versus the actual physical metal. Now, the two sources that I know of, one is on the U.S. debt clock, and I know you've shown that in videos before, where they're saying the leverage is 180 to 1. However, then you've got, I believe his name is Andrew McGuire out of London, saying that because you remember now, after Brexit, silver went up quite a bit in 2016. It almost hit $21, if I remember right. And then it went down very, very hard from it was October 1st to December 18th. Silver took a massive hit. Andrew McGuire came out and did an interview on King World News and said that there was 41% more future contracts added to the market, not sold into the market, but added to the market. So he thinks the leverage is 520 paper ounces to every physical ounce held by the COMEX. I was curious if you have any better information, because we have two. Okay.
No, I don't. And the reason for that is because, like, the truth of the matter is, the truth is always more scary than even what we know. So I don't know Andrew from a hole in the head. I don't know what kind of sources he's got. I don't believe the numbers that are given to us on the COMEX. I don't believe anything. Everything is a lie. So why would they at any point say, ha, it's only 500 ounces, 500, paper contracts to there. It could be thousands. I mean, the only leverage that I can probably use is, I know all the silver in the world mined on a global basis is about $14 billion. I know they admitted that they spend $5 trillion a year in paper contracts to suppress it. So I don't know what the leverage between 14 billion and 5 trillion. My calculations don't work that way, but it sounds a lot more than 500 to 1.
Yeah.
It sounds like millions to 1.
Yeah. And
that's
in fact,
where I think the value of silver is so undervalued. I mean, it should be worth more than gold. Gold should be worth way more than it is now.
Sure it is. It should be, absolutely. In fact, there's a lot of speculation that gold will probably hit 5,000 quite easily, in the near term. I don't know why people keep coming up with that number, but it is a popular one that pops up quite a bit.
I think at the end of the day, all those numbers are rubbish. Like, I can't even begin to quantify how much silver would be worth in dollar terms, because I don't think the dollar is going to make it out.
No, I don't either.
You look at Venezuela as just a perfect example. I think Venezuela, I'm probably going to be off a little bit, but the idea is the same. Back then, like, the bolivar was, pretty close to what the dollar was, maybe 7 bolivars to, $1. And now it's like, hundreds of millions of bolivars to the dollar. Okay. So, you price silver in terms of bolivars. What dollar figure could you put on, or what bolivar figure could you put on silver back in, 2005 and say, aha, that's the top, that's the fair valuation of the bolivar or silver and bolivars, when you have governments that are proven that when times get tough, they just print more money.
Right.
What has our government done? We just got done saying Trump just spent $1.5 trillion more new debt than this year during a good economy. I don't think Venezuela ever printed that much. They might have. I don't know.
Yeah, the disconnect is amazing to me.
This is the biggest sin of silver stackers. Never value your silver in dollar terms. Never say, oh, it's cheap at 14. I'm going to sell out at 50. It's all an illusion. If you're into this for the way I am, at some point the dollar won't buy silver, because you won't give it up, because you know that if you sell those for dollars, like those poor Venezuelans, can you imagine the guy who's like, oh, I live in Venezuela. It's a socialist country. Oil is going really good right now. I have extra money and I'm going to save in silver to protect my future family from, what happens in all these South American countries with inflation. I'm going to go buy silver. Right now it's like 21 bolivars for an ounce of silver, and I'm going to go buy a whole bunch of it and hold on to it. And then as this inflation creeps on, and then he realizes, well, God, the silver actually did a great job, because now my silver is now not worth 21 bolivars for an ounce of silver. Now it's worth 100. It's 5 times. I can go buy 5 times more stuff with it. It did good. Maybe I'll sell. I'll hold on to it for a little bit more. And then it goes to 1,000 bolivars per ounce. And then you're like, well, geez, I got some bills. Maybe I should pay off these debts and stuff. And you might sell off a little bit of it. But at some point, wouldn't you think, like, God, it went from 21 to 1,000?
Yeah.
That would be a great time to get out. And yet, what has happened to it? It's gone up to 144 million bolivars for an ounce of silver. So anybody who sold anywhere along the line in terms of bolivars got thieved. They got played. They got tricked to give up their real wealth for the digital illusion of wealth. So if you're into this for the way I am, I continue to buy and sell, but I'm always stacking more. But the real wealth, the real way of getting through is, at some point there's going to be another financial order that's going to be set. They'll have another Bretton Woods. They'll have some other international agreement on valuation. They may even back it by gold. Who knows what it's going to be? But we have to go through, especially this country, especially the world, have to go through a massive hyperinflation that's going to destroy all these generational global debt-based fiat Ponzi schemes, because it's unsustainable. We have our youngest generation saddled with more debt earlier on, worse debt. I mean, the student loan crisis, what society burdens their children with $1.5 trillion of worthless, unforgivable debt than student loans? And that's what we're doing.
Mention the
in order to keep it
going,
in order to keep the system going, we're sacrificing our future generation. Well, at some point, the future generation is gonna, I give up. We're not going to have kids. We're not going to consume, and we can't even make our monthly payments. And then what?
Yeah. In regards to that, we see the financial and industrial power moving east. It's almost cyclical. What's to stop China from doing the same type of PM manipulations with a paper market through the SGE, the Shanghai Gold Exchange?
I think, well, there's nothing stopping them. I mean, they have their own, autonomy to manipulate their own money and their own people, and they've proven that they can do that. Would they do that? I don't think so. I think, and I think it shows that, while they're certainly exposed to the dollar, they're also the largest miner of gold and also largest consumer of gold. They forbid any exports of gold. But when you think about how large that economy is, how gold, I mean, they have Gold Week. Like we have Christmas and consumerism holidays. They have Gold Week. Like they buy gold, they give gold, they understand gold. So it's more ingrained there. Same thing with India. I mean, those two countries have probably more gold than, what we really have. I don't believe that we have all that gold in Fort Knox.
No, that's gone.
So when you say that the power is moving from, where we are, the West to the East, I think we're the outlier. Throughout all of human history, China and India were the largest economies in the world. That's why they have such gigantic populations. They were economically successful for generations, far more than even before this country was even founded. Our little bubble that we lived in was the outgrowth of a world devastated by World War II, where every other economic and society was devastated. Their industries, their people, their finances devastated. Britain, France, Italy, Germany, Russia, China, Japan, and then South America and Middle East and Africa. Okay, they didn't participate in World War II, but they were never industrial. The only one that came out of that was the United States. We grew through the worst of everything. And now, over these past 80 some odd years, we've blown that inheritance and created more debt than anybody else has had out there. We've spent all of our real wealth. We've exported our manufacturing base. We have no basis of our economy. Now we're looking for social media to show signs of a healthy economy. What kind of insane world is this? Producing real goods and services. Now we're going to value it based off of how sick our society is on Facebook?
Yep, I know. It is a strange paradigm. In fact, it's one I couldn't have imagined. Chris, I'm 47 years old, and I could not have imagined society like this back when I was 15. I couldn't have imagined it like this.
No.
We were hardworking. You know, we went out and shoveled driveways so we could get money for the things we wanted. And but, you know, money was different back then. At least it was money. Currency was different back then. It was worth more. And if you don't mind, Chris, I'd like to bring in my co-host, Dell, who has some questions from the audience.
Sure.
Dell, come on in.
Hello there, TC. Hello there, Chris. Many thanks for spending some time with us today. I have a question here from Mike from Maine, who's live in the chat with us. And he wants to know do you have any data and what are your thoughts on the EFPs? And for those that's listening, that's the exchange of futures for physical.
No, I don't look into any of the, like I said before, I don't trust the numbers. I don't understand why anybody would speculate paper markets and silver. Like, you're part of the problem if you're betting on future contracts, if you're betting on, even if you're investing in SLV, you're enabling these guys to get away with it because you're playing in their rigged game. The only way I will invest, and the only way I even care, is to have physical silver in my possession. Because you have to realize, if you bet, you know, on futures and contracts and all that other stuff, you have to understand that the arena that you're betting in, you have an unfair advantage because the guys that you're probably betting against are the banks that own the markets, that have these high-tech, now AI, super, you know, quantum computers that can manipulate trades and, you know, in and out faster than you can even hit a click button. And you think you're somehow going to win speculating in there? You're nuts.
Well,
actually, you know, people say like, oh, you know, I get to have leverage and all that other stuff. Silver is the leverage bet, because when all this falls apart, you're going to have magnitudes more real purchasing power when all these other assets that are out there are going to be devastated because the banking system, the currency, the whole paradigm of consumerism. I mean, 70% of our economy is based off of consumerism. The idea that we can take money that we don't have to go buy things we don't need to impress people who don't care. That's America. So if you want out of that, you got to stop playing in these digital illusion markets, because you're no fair competition there, and then get into the real thing. So no, I don't have any technical knowledge on the leverage or, you know, any of that stuff.
Thank you for that, Chris. Makes sense to me. Back over to you, TC.
Thank you, Dell. Yeah, I think basically that was an interesting market that had just come up, because the COMEX never delivers physical except to JP Morgan. I think we all understand that that's the only physical client of the COMEX. That's it.
Well, so one thing I left out of the my timeline here is that, okay, after JP Morgan crashed silver from when it hit its peak in 2011, the very next month, this whole social media movement, I was a part of it. I even took out an ad on the Drudge Report saying JP Morgan does not want you to buy silver. And that was, you know, that was part of my, you know, becoming popular. I came in on that wave. But what happened was, when JP Morgan then drove down, and I'm assuming that they're the, you know, bad guys in this situation, they went from having no COMEX vault, no physical silver on market, to opening up their own COMEX vault. And now, since the price of silver has been dropping, and all of our silver stackers have been whining and complaining that the price of silver is lower, woe is us, they have been stacking silver to the point now they are the largest physical holder of silver on the COMEX, if you're to believe their numbers. They have consistently stacked from the very month that they crashed it. I think it was April 2012, or I forget, right around the time that they crashed it. They opened up a vault and been consistently stacking physical silver to the point now that I think they have 148 million ounces of physical silver on the vault. And that represents 71%, at least the last time I looked, 71% of all the eligible silver that's available on the market. So how do you get these guys that had this weird relationship with Bear Stearns? You know, I'm not saying maybe they crashed Bear Stearns to get their silver short or whatever, but JP Morgan's playing along with this. And now, for the first time ever, they're stacking physical silver. What do they know? They didn't need to stack physical silver to manipulate the price of silver. They have carte blanche, government approval, Federal Reserve approval, $5 trillion of paper silver. They don't need to have physical silver to do that. So why are they doing it? My guess is that they see the light at the end of the tunnel. They know that this system's unsustainable. They know the manipulation that they had participated in driving down the price of silver, and that the physical value of silver is probably worth way more than it is at $14.
Mm-hmm. Yep. In fact, I'd like to bring this up real quick because there's a lot of disinformation on the internet about what actually happened to Bear Stearns. I don't know if you've looked at this, Chris, but there's more stories saying that they crashed because of the housing market than the fact they could not cover their silver shorts in the spring of 2008. That's why they collapsed.
Yeah.
And
I just find it very coincidental. The very same day that silver peaked, $21, March 17th, 2008, is the same day that Bear Stearns went broke. Yep. I don't know the finances. I don't know their exposure to derivatives and housing and all that other stuff.
It was minimal.
I find it highly suspicious that the day that silver peaked is the day that they went broke, and that JP Morgan came in with an inside Federal Reserve backed deal to buy that huge institution and competitor. And then from then they drove it down to 8. And then, then the financial crisis happened. All this new money, QE, all, $1 billion bailouts, all this other stuff comes in. JP Morgan gets backed 100 cents on the dollar and all their bad bets to keep the banks liquefied. And then the price of silver rose. And then they get up to 50 where they're like, whoa, if it gets above 50, maybe more people will get in on it. And since it's a Giffen good, the higher the price silver goes, the more demand it's going to have, because then people are going to go, oh, God, this is either a way of speculating, investing. It's going to go through the roof. The dollar's going to go crash and all that other stuff. So they drove it down. And then what do? They opened up their own vault. And now they're the largest silver stacker. Oh, and by the way, they're also the custodian for the largest silver
SLV
ETF,
fund.
The SLV. So
that's
they
correct.
have access to potentially, 500 million ounces of silver. Why are these guys doing it?
Well, to make matters worse, Chris, I mean, they know where all, everyone's got their stop limits at,
yes,
because they are the custodian of the stupid SLV fund,
Yeah, you can't play in their game.
That's, and by the way, I would think that would be illegal, but apparently in all its, all of its intelligence, the U.S. government seems to think that that's fair and safe.
Yeah.
But hey, let me go back to another fundamental question here about future technology and silver. Existing tech uses a lot of silver. We all know this, and it goes in everything from pharmaceuticals to, electronics to even the windshield in your car. I mean, I could go on and on, as you know. However, I'm curious if you think dying tech and new tech will cancel each other out for the demand for silver, or if you think that future tech will just wildly increase the demand for silver.
Okay, so like one thing I thought about is like back in 1980 when silver got up to 50 during the inflationary crisis and Paul Volcker raising interest rates, which is a whole nother story. If any of your viewers go on my YouTube channel and watch my probably 30-minute documentary on the Hunt brothers, because that's a whole different story. But back in the 1980s, the number one consumer demand for silver was like photography. Like all the pictures that we took used silver, and they recycled that silver, but that was the main demand of it. And since then, that tech died because now we have digital tech, right? So yeah, the demand for that silver in that particular use went down. But then think about, since 1980, all the varied uses that have grown from silver, that it becomes now the second most versatile commodity in the world. It's used in so many products. I think I read 10,000, but I can't, go through and even list, 100 of them. But now it's being used in like all those things that you mentioned. And then think about not only what it's been used in, but think about the profits derived off of it. There's a chart that I often throw in my videos showing the losses that silver miners take and the profits the silver users make. So you have this cartel of industrial users that benefit off the price of silver being low to the detriment of the miners. They profit off of that. So
especially the medical industry, as far as I can tell.
Oh God, yeah. Think of the profit margins there.
Yep.
But
Pharmaceuticals.
it's a vital, irreplaceable metal. Okay, it's got so many uses that you just can't take another element and throw it in there, and yet we're throwing it away. We are not valuing it properly. That's ultimately what this all comes down to. I don't really care what the dollar paradigm does, what trillion-dollar companies are made, or what's the best investment. But I do know that if we don't value, as a humanity, silver properly, we're going to throw away this rare, precious metal, this gift, on garbage. And we can't undo that, short of space mining. We can't even get off, to the moon again, like,
Yep.
Like you think that somehow we're going to get blessed with some more, I don't know, silver from outer space. I don't know. My point is that we have to revalue silver now. And if they're not going to, I encourage the people here to think about where we are going as a humanity, what the chances are that this global generational debt-based fiat Ponzi scheme collapses in their children's lifetime. And that the very fact, this is another scary thing I don't think a lot of people take in consideration. This, I feel, will be the first collapse that the criminal elite, the wealthy people who profit off of this, don't necessarily need humanity ever again. Every other collapse,
Yep.
every other nation that's crashed, every other market that's crashed, there's been a benefit of rebooting up the system, okay, to get human labor. We used to have wars, capture slaves, take over children to get the labor to create the goods and services out of that, to create the wealth. And then the Industrial Revolution, we needed manpower to run the mills and build the cars and stuff like that. We are now at an age where AI and robotics are going to get to a point where humanity is no longer needed for these guys to continue to live the way that they are. And if you think that that's wrong, go to Detroit. I live in Cleveland. It's been decimated. Cleveland at one time was the richest city in the world, like around 1900 when the Rockefellers were here. This was the center of their oil empire. Now Cleveland's, Cleveland.
Cleveland. Hey, actually, we do talk about that in Truth, Money, and Freedom quite a bit, is the possibility that global depopulation may be on the agenda for the next run of a currency crisis. And that's a scary thought. It's not something that I think that a lot of people like to hear about, but it is a real possibility because of AI and robotics, as you brought in. I'd also like to take a second to thank you so much for the
and it's
Hunt
not
brother.
even, it's not even just the AI and robotics. I think the burden of debt naturally makes people not want to have kids. And you can see this when the closer people live to cities, the more debt that they have. Unless you're doing very well, we always see these people, making millions of dollars on Montauk Island with their 7 beautiful kids and their nanny and their yoga wife, like that's an outlier. But the majority of people realize that there's, not a lot of resources to continue to care for and take, have more babies. Like they're expensive, if you're going to take care of them right. And when you have that much more debt, at some point, that debt becomes onerous to the point where we stop reproducing. So I don't necessarily fear like the Terminator coming through and like killing everybody, but I do think the long-term consequences of not being able to create wealth, not having the hope to create wealth, and the cost, of real cost of actually raising and living becomes so expensive that people just simply stop, reproducing and having kids. And that's where I think ultimately, this is going to end up going, where the majority of people, especially if you're devastated by a financial crisis that wipes out all the wealth in the world, like how would you, and at that point your children become a burden.
Sure. And under our current paradigm, there's no farming, there's no food without the credit system, and that's a very scary prospect. That and by the way, let me say this real quick. I just wanted to thank you for your Hunt Brothers video that you put on YouTube here just a little while ago. It's awesome. I highly recommend anyone who's listening to actually, in fact, we'll link it at the bottom of this video. And also,
I think that's a great story, because those were two family that essentially saw the world the way that I did. They didn't trust the Eastern establishment. They said any damn fool can run the money press, but silver's like forever. These were successful men, much in the same way I was. They owned, the Kansas City Chiefs. They owned oil platforms. They owned cattle, land. Like these guys were what I feel salt of the earth, American, capitalists who loved everything that was great about this country and despised the debt and death culture that comes out of Washington, D.C. and New York City.
Yep. And they got pounded for it too. I mean, they got hit pretty hard, but
they lost
did
because they played in their game.
Yep.
They didn't lose because they stacked silver. They lose because they played in the futures markets in a rigged game that they kept changing the rules on to make sure that these guys lost. They lost because they played their game. I'm encouraging people to not play their game, to recognize that things are not going to end well, and to protect their future. Silver is this best insurance policy, and I believe, not just as a safety measure, but will create generational wealth, because you'll be able to transfer your wealth into this next paradigm. Not only have wealth, well, everybody else is devastated, but think about the asset prices, how much land is going to go for if interest rates are 8%, 24%, or there is no mortgage market, because who the hell is going to borrow money against a liability like a house? What's the cash value of your house right now if you had to sell it for cash?
Yep.
It's
very,
dramatically
very, very
lower
small
than the 30-year, federally backed 4% mortgages that typically everybody's got now.
And absolutely, that's what they did with automobiles too. Automobiles. I didn't know this, but apparently they've got like 9-year loans to buy a car now. 9-year loans.
Yeah.
Once again, when I was 15, I never thought in a million years this kind of stuff would happen.
That was another big factor. I mean, I had 7 car dealerships. We're very, very successful in New Jersey, which is a very wealthy state. And we had billionaires that lived in their town of Summit where I worked. In fact, who's that Kramer from CNBC? He lived in town. Like, it's a very wealthy town. And I had been there, since my teenage years and growing up to becoming a man. I've watched customers come through, and I got to learn about them. And I recognized, what was acceptable and, what people did. And by the time I had left, I saw like people buying $50,000 Grand Cherokee Limiteds for their nanny to drive 1 hour a week because they didn't want them driving the Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's when I start going, I watched sales guys who couldn't sell a car to anybody all of a sudden make $300,000 packaging mortgages.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people with no brains, no social skills, no nothing, making more money than I could think about making. And I said, that's kind of unsustainable. I watched my house go up double in value in 4 years. I go, that doesn't seem right. That's when I woke up. That's when I said, hey, this is not sustainable. I want out. And when you start to say I want out, people go, oh, you want to get diversified. Every other asset out there except for gold and silver are correlated. They're digital illusions of wealth that have run up in value based off the amount of money that's out there, based off of this idea that we have this unlimited amount of energy, that we are going to consume our way to heaven, and that the world is at peace. None of those things historically have proven to last very long, much less all of them for as long as we've had. And when it goes, I know one thing about nature. Things may look calm one day, but one day the storm comes, and then people go, oh, I wasn't ready. Silver is your way for being ready.
Yeah, and I want to say for the audience here, for full disclosure, that I've been buying Chris Duane's rounds for several years now. And I just want to plug Golden State Mint real quick. We'll probably link them below in the video here as well. He has, in fact, an enormous, Chris, how many rounds have you created now? Some 220, 230? Yeah,
and then each one of them has multiple different strikes and sizes and double operate. I essentially release 3 new things every week. And the idea is, I hated buying boring government bullion. When I first started stacking, all I stacked was 100-ounce bars. Then I realized that the price of the 100-ounce bars would never rise above the manipulated price of silver. And if silver ever got to the price that I thought it was going to be, 100 ounces is going to be kind of hard to change for eggs or, a house or whatever. It was just going to be so valuable. So then I switched into buying government mints. So I bought silver eagles like everybody else does, thinking this is the most, popular, safest thing. And you pay a premium to get that, but they hold on to their premium. And then I realized, well, geez, there's hundreds of millions of this exact same design for over 40 years. Maybe there's something better out there. And then I got into the idea of that there's semi-numismatics out there that you could pay essentially the same price as you would for an eagle, but have something that's a little bit more rare, a little bit more meaningful. And, unfortunately, the only things that I could really find were the Perth Mint stuff. But then even that was like boring. I mean, I don't know how many animals and feathers, and I mean, the back of each one of them has got Queen Elizabeth, who I can't stand. I mean, as an American, I don't know how anybody would buy something with, a royalty, elitist, resting, I don't want to say her face, resting face on there. And so I said, I had the opportunity of creating my own stuff. And I said, I'm going to do something consciously different. My first design was called Debt and Death. And I put what I feel is the patriarch of this entire paradigm, Nathan Rothschild, on there. And it said, in debt and death, we trust. And it was this skull image showing a banker saying that they trust debt and death, because that's ultimately what we have, is this debt and death paradigm. We have debt for anybody who's inside the United States and death for anybody who opposes our way of life. And this is coming from a guy. I was in the Marines for 7 years. Okay. Don't think that I'm like some hippie, guy who, doesn't like capitalism. No, I made my money through capitalism. I get it. I served my country. I get it. But the reality, the harsh reality of this country is that we are a debt and death paradigm. We do not spread the Constitution and freedom and apple pie across the world. We go in with Marines, we blow stuff up, and the very next people that go in there are the bankers to sign the contracts for the corporations and, to take resources. And we put in strongmen to press down the people there. And we wonder why the world hates us. Americans are totally immune to the damage that we've caused so many other nations out there. And there's going to be a karmic financial backlash at some point against the dollar. And, for the people who are going to suffer underneath it, it's going to be tremendous.
I don't know, Chris. We drop bombs full of freedom all the time, all over the world.
Yeah, we're gonna free you.
Yep, that's right. But also, too, I'd like to, before I get on with another question here, I'd like to let you all know that Golden State Mint actually carries Chris Duane's silver pieces. And also, I'll say, too, I have your only gold piece. I'm a gold stacker as well.
Yes. And, Gold Freedom Girl, I think, is a tremendous. I mean, it's probably, I'm biased, but it's probably the most beautiful gold coin out there.
I agree.
And it's certainly one of the rarest. I mean, every year I may strike a few hundred of them. I mean, like, it really doesn't even make financial sense for me to continue to do it, but I do it out of more of a symbolic gesture, because I know at some point I want to own gold, but not right now. The gold to silver ratio is too far out of whack. I'd rather have my 81 ounces of silver and wait for the gold to silver ratio collapse like it did during the financial crisis down to a 1 to 30 ratio. Then I could feasibly trade in, half my gold and get, or half all of my silver and get twice my gold that I could have bought. Yep. And then when the price goes the other way, then you trade your gold back into silver again. So I think it's a good way. So I plan on one day, owning more than 1 ounce of physical gold, but certainly not at these levels.
Well, that's kind of, you're kind of shaping a new paradigm for those who stack, because I'm a libertarian, and those who listen to our show know this. And I love the messages that you have on your coins. Absolutely love them. I'm not a fan of any politician. I certainly don't like the two-party political system we have here. But you have some pretty vibrant and echoing messages that literally come across in your coins, and it kind of makes stacking fun again. As opposed to stacking silver eagles. And I have lots of friends that, just, dyed in the wool, got to have silver eagles. And once I turned them on to, Chris Duane's, pieces, especially the more offensive ones, like Make America Great Again. No, I'm telling you, they're yes, they are. Make America Great Again. I can't believe you had such a low sale on that, because you saw what those are going for on eBay. I mean, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And I think it's probably, with the exception of the one Hillary coin you did that had a 500 circulation, probably Make America Great Again was the best coin you ever created, and it certainly is the most popular on eBay, in my personal opinion. And also the certificates of authenticity.
For the people, you have to describe that coin for the people who don't know what it is.
That would be difficult to describe.
Basically, can I do it?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. You go for it, buddy.
So I wanted to come up with a design, because I believe that the problem is not monetary, it's not political, it's not financial, it's not even religious. It's a matter of consciousness, what we actively or unconsciously support in our daily lives. So I think unconsciously, the majority of humanity is good, right? That they just want to do their own thing, live their life, love who they love, and just live a normal life. Then there's cunning people out there who make tremendous money and power on a psychopathic level to manipulate the masses around them into some sort of collective organization. And that could be, religion, it could be, a corporation, it could be, military, whatnot. But at the end of the day, there's a story that's told to unconscious people who are just naturally going through the life that they need to somehow exchange their time, energy, money, career into this collective cause. Now, it could be your career, it could be your military service, it could be devotion to your church, it could be, whatnot, some political campaign, whatever. Okay. There's somebody at the top that says, hey, you, without purpose and meaning, make you feel bad about your life, that you're just doing, life. You would be so much better if you were to devote your time and energy to the Marines or the Republican Party or, working for Apple Computer or Starbucks or whatever. And that they use that power to create wealth and to reinforce and do what they want to do. So when I looked at the rise of Donald Trump, I said, hey, I can't believe that this guy's running for president. I mean, I was like, how are we going forward with this?
It was like a reality show on television, wasn't it?
I wanted to get a design that would underlie the reasoning, the psychological reasoning of why people do support Donald Trump. And you just came out of 8 years of this Obama, liberal, social justice warrior. And then there's the idea that they were going to get Hillary in there. And you had all these guys that have for 8 years called Obama the Antichrist. He was doubling the debt. And all of a sudden, these guys were against debt. They were against Obama winning the Nobel Peace Prize when he was actively conducting 7 wars all across the world. So all these libertarians and Republicans are like, Obama's the Antichrist, all this other stuff. And then here comes Donald Trump on the stage. And now they got this guy who's telling it like it is and saying they're going to throw crooked Hillary in jail. And it was like this emotional just fuck you. And that's what the design came from. So I had Donald Trump essentially, and it was also inspired by this movie that everybody needs to watch called Idiocracy. It is a tremendously low budget, poorly filmed movie, but it is funny because it's sad. We are living in an idiocracy, and the basis of the Idiocracy movie is that much like I said, that people who have wealth and it simply becomes too expensive to have kids and they slowly die out. The idea of Idiocracy is that only the smart, conscious people who recognize the idea of having children and raising them properly, they're not going to repopulate, but there's a lot of dumb people out there who like making a lot of babies, and that we end up getting overrun by a bunch of idiots, and that the IQs can drop tremendously and everything starts falling apart. And the president in this future world is a former porn star, wrestler, guy named Hector Macho Camacho or whatever. And he's the president of the United States because he's the most masculine, shooting guns, drinking beer, screaming, riding motorcycles and pointing the middle finger out there. And I'm like, oh my God, that movie was only made like 10 years ago. And here we literally have, a former reality TV show star who was banging prostitutes or porn stars while his third wife is giving birth to their child and, without a condom. And there's video of him saying, grab him by the pussy. And now he's president? How does this happen? Well, it happens because a grand majority of people out there wanted to have that big fuck you moment to the 8 years of Obama. Well, what do you think is going to happen when Trump gets there? There's going to be a whole nother side of humanity that's going to want their big fuck you moment. And some other guy on the right, on the left is going to rise up. And these guys play this. It's a Hegelian dialectic. Left or right, it doesn't matter. The one thing that's consistent in Washington, D.C. is that we will always get more debt and more death. There's one party out there. There's no Republicans. There's no Democrats. There's a one-party system. It's the debt and death party. So until people recognize that and stop, again, playing the game of voting, getting emotionally involved in social issues and stuff, the one thing that's never on the table is the Federal Reserve, the military-industrial complex, or the federal power that they have. That's never on the ballot. But they'll talk all day long about, gays and marriage and, all this other stuff. The things that matter are never up for a vote. So the only thing you can do is to say, okay, the world's screwed up, but my world doesn't have to be. I recognize that this system is totally rigged. I recognize that any effort that I put into this rigged game will be wasted, because any real revolution would be infiltrated, subverted, and destroyed. So everybody's like, I know, join a militia, join the Constitution. No. Take care of yourself. It's the only thing you can control. And ultimately, the only thing that really matters in life.
Yeah. And also to add to what Chris just said, that coin does have a large cruise missile sticking out from between Trump's legs.
The big phallic symbol, yeah. It's a great design. Go look it up.
But I'm a stacker. I've been a stacker since I was 14 years old, and I'm 47 now. And but I want to say, when I look at the silver that I collected before Chris Duane pieces came out, I looked at it and said, that's my future wealth. Mm-hmm. But when I look at my Chris Duane pieces, which is a substantial amount of my silver, I say that's why I am accumulating this for my future wealth. So it's actually a lot more fun.
I think here's one aspect of that, and I didn't go into this with the idea of what it's become, but I went into this. Silvershield line was created in the silver bear market. Like, I wanted to create something different. I can complain about the government mints with Queen Elizabeth on the back, or the boring 43-year-old American Eagle design that there's hundreds of millions of, but I created something different. But what I think is most amazing is that I've been successful. By no means should I even be in business. Like, what guy starts in the silver bear market and continues to grow when all these dealers, miners, refiners, they're all suffering, because the price of silver is going down? I'm somehow growing through this. But I think the idea that for years, since 2012, so 6 going on 7 years, I've been creating these hundreds of different designs out there under the radar. Like, even in the silver stacker community, like, I'm not really a popular dude. I'm not, because I don't like the majority of what silver stackers are stacking. I say, why are you supporting government mints? You're worried about the dollar. You're worried about the Federal Reserve. You're worried about who's in power, the Treasury, what they're going to do to this country and destroy it. And then you're going to go run to the Treasury that's run by a former Goldman Sachs guy and throw your money at them to support a government mint, or worse, Queen Elizabeth, the largest landowner in the world. Her family has invaded 9 out of the 10 countries in this world. Has probably spread more debt and death than any other lineage of family. You're going to go throw your money at her, or are you going to have a private solution? And that bothers people sometimes. But that's why I started it. Like, I don't care what anybody else does. I'm walking my talk. But I think what's going to be most amazing with my Silvershield stuff is that this whole series has been based off of being anti-debt and death. And that silver in its form is going to be a shield, financially, spiritually, morally, whatever meaning you're going to put behind it. And that when and if this global generational debt-based fiat Ponzi collapses, and that the silver that I've been talking about for all these years actually ends up doing what I said it's going to do, save you, transfer your wealth from one paradigm to another, hold on to your purchasing power at the very least, and create generational wealth at the very most. What value do you think all those little Silvershield designs that have little mintages from 80 all the way up to maybe 1,000, 10,000 or whatever, what value do you think those are going to have in a world full of that now clamors for physical silver? And then the majority of physical silver out there is government mints, that all these governments failed in their most vital aspect of just maintaining some sort of economic balance or, fairity in the world. And that they died, much like maybe the Nazis or the Soviets collapsed. And then, people recognize that silver is this thing. And then in this weird silver world, there was this little teeny market of Silvershield that called out the greatest transfer of wealth, that said, hey, not everybody in this world is for this debt and death paradigm. Not everybody in this world wants to support the government mints. And that these people invested in all these weird little designs that showed the hundreds of different aspects of how just screwed up this paradigm is, and predicted that it would collapse. I got to think that that stuff is going to be legendary on the other side. And that's why I continue to only stack what I do, because I don't know which designs are going to be great or not. I wish I had more of the Make America Great Again. But, I think on whole, I think the idea of what I'm doing long-term is not even remotely recognized inside the silver community now, inside of a bear market. But I got to think that, when silver actually has its day and people start to recognize, what silver really is, I think anybody holding these little designs of the one brand out there, you know, and I don't know how many other brands, you know, dare touch the issues that I do, but who has been successful in growing through this whole time period. So for people who don't know anything about this, the first place you should go is silvershieldguide.com. A subscriber of mine who is an accountant created this incredible book that has tracked and traced everything that I've done since the beginning, nothing that I would even put together. And it's a great book. It shows you all the history, all the designs, all the certificates of authenticity. It's a great place for people just to get familiar with what I'm doing.
Gotcha. Thank you very much, Chris. And I'll tell you what, we've run out of time for today, but I'll tell you what, we would love to have you back sometime if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
I would have really liked more questions from the audience, because inevitably, like, the one guy that speaks up probably speaks for like 10 or 20 other people. And the majority of like the interviews that I get tend to cover a lot of this basics because it's what drove you to me. But ultimately it's the you know, the listeners that end up bringing up the new ideas that maybe I haven't even thought about. I mean, a lot of stuff that we talked about, I mean, geez, I mean, I've done thousands of videos on this stuff. But I'm always looking for the next thing to make me even question. That's half the reason why I do this. It's not that I think that I'm right. I keep seeing the world the way that I am doing, saying, hey, somebody please tell me I'm wrong. You know, I don't want to live like this. I would like to think my government is a good place and that my money is safe in banks and that, you know, the future is going to be bright for my children and that everything's going to work out. And I just can't get there at all. And as a result, I put my money into silver.
Yep, and I do too, by the way. I'm with you, brother. I mean, I've been doing this since I was 14 years old, and my grandmother explained to me why silver coins were valuable. And I have kept that, and I've, by the way, passed it on to my daughter and my granddaughter, and they're collecting silver as well. Right. And we're all doing it. We're all doing it for the same reasons. And I'd like to say one more time to the listening audience here, we've had Chris Duane with us today. He is the owner of the Silvershield Group. We've shown a lot of his videos and his websites during this interview, so you've been able to see that. But you can go to goldenstatemint.com and actually purchase his rounds there. He does 3 rounds a week. He offers certificates of authenticity with each and every one. They are limited mintages. Chris, what's your average mint size per coin?
Oh, yeah, not a lot. Not every design that you see on Golden State Mint has certificate of authenticity. So I created this mini mintage program. The idea that you would come out with one design, 1 week only, and take all the sales and mint all the designs, or mint them all at the same time, and each one of them gets a numbered certificate of authenticity. I thought this was a great way for 2 things. Number one, it made stacking fun again, because every week there's something new there to do. So it forces you into dollar cost averaging, which I think is vital. So many silver stackers go, oh, I'm going to go buy a whole bunch of silver when it gets to 14, 10, 8, whatever. No, the only way that I found that this works is that on a consistent basis, stack on a weekly basis, because what you're doing is not spending money. You're actually starting to pay yourself in the form of money that you should be paid in, which is silver. So I don't measure any of the profits that I make until I see physical silver ounces come back to me. So dollar sales and mintages don't really mean much. But as far as like the proof mintage, the proof is higher quality, so it has that dark cameo, which I think is the best way of looking at them. They're true pieces of art, high quality, much lower mintage, and higher premiums. Okay, those typically go from anywhere from maybe 400 to 800 on a weekly basis minted. Some are lower, some are higher. And then the mini mintage program sells for as little as $2 over spot, so it's comparable to anything that you would be able to buy at a government mint. It is a brilliant uncirculated, so it's got that matte finish. It also comes with a certificate of authenticity. And the mintages, quite honestly, I mean, I've seen them as low as 1,000, and high mark, I think, was
6,000 or 7,000.
No, 10,000. I think the Winter is Here, the Putin design that I did.
Yeah, with Putin. Yep.
Yeah, that one really caught fire. But I mean, the
actually, I got to tell you something, Chris. I know a guy who purchased 1,500 of those.
Yeah.
I actually know the guy.
Pretty cool. That's a pretty cool thing to have right now.
It is. It is. It's a very popular coin, and it also sells very well on eBay as well.
And the idea is that since I've started to do this, I know that anybody can go buy any other silver out there. I get a lot of people going, why would I buy your silver at $3 over spot when I can get buffaloes for 69 cents. Well, buffaloes will never be worth more than 69 cents. In fact, every time you sell them, they're probably worth spot, if not less than spot. And if you spent just a little bit more onto something that is truly rare, meaningful, part of a growing series, comes with a certificate of authenticity, you can have on a weekly basis a brand new design that you can look at and go, oh, this is a new message, new meaning, new this. And it's rare. Now it becomes into its own market. And if you go on eBay and you look at the sales of these things, they always go up in value. Why? Because there's always new people coming in who want the design that they missed. The guys that own these things never really sell them. They're guys like you and me who are like, I'm not really interested in selling for, my $17 coin for $28 or whatever. I'm holding on to this forever. I'll sell every other ounce that I have before I start getting rid of this stuff. So there's very few of them that reach the secondary market. And the ones that do, they go up in value because they're rare, they're meaningful, they're part of a series. And I think the more that the investment community comes back into silver, back into gold, and then learns more about this message. I mean, you saw what happened with Bitcoin. I mean, if you can take a digital code that is free and open source that had 1,600 other crypto copycats out there and have that go up to $20,000, I don't know what. I mean, I made a Bitcoin design in 2014, a proof one. I think I only made 200 of them, and I just saw one go on eBay for $500. Like, who's to say that that's expensive or cheap when you have some digital code that made 20,000? Yeah. And there was supposedly 16 million of them out in existence. There was only 200 of these that I made.
Yep.
So.
Okay. Well, thank you once again for joining us. And I'm deadly serious. We'd love to have you back again sometime soon.
I had a great time, and you guys were respectful, brought really good questions. I hope I did well answering them. One thing you can always guarantee about me is I walk my talk. I get passionate about this because I care. I'm not into this for ego or profit, because my face is not in, I think, one video of the 1,600 videos. I don't want people to even care about me. I want them focused on my message. And as far as profits, I've walked away from more money than most people ever consider making. And I really don't. I just continue to stack more silver. And that all the profits I end up doing going into, that's how I can afford the artists and the dyes and stuff to continue to do this. I just keep revolving through. So I appreciate people who recognize that there's a guy out there trying to make the change that he wants to see in the world. And I can't do this without people, supporting me on a daily basis, whether it's through interviews like this or actually purchasing the coins or recommending the videos on the Truth Never Told channel. I recognize that a lot of people are putting a lot of effort behind me, and it's not just me.
Okay. Thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you next time. You take care, buddy. Absolutely. And once again, thanks for taking time. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for everybody who made this possible.